Welcome to the McKinsey and Company case, brought to you by Team Number 2, Shakiva Bell, Andrew Marquez, and Rochelle Martinez.
The McKinsey and Company Introduction. Founded in 1926 by University of Chicago professor James McKinsey, he organized a firm of accounting and engineering advisors. Over time, his name grew quickly. McKinsey began recruiting experienced executives, training them in the approach he called the General Survey Outline. He implemented sessions for consultants through a firm sequence of breakdowns. So he spoke to them about goals, strategy, policies, organizations, facilities, procedures, and even it motivated the personnel while he was teaching them. He also motivated them to create data and start to think for themselves and think outside of the box. In 1932, Mac hired Marvin Bower. He was a wise lawyer from Harvard that had an MBA. And within 2 years, he offered him a managerial position in New York City. Mac figured that he should upgrade the firm's appearance in the industry that is usually referred to as efficiency experts, among other things. And he felt that Bauer would be the one to come in and help instill professionalism into the associates and the consultants. Bauer and his colleagues firmly believed that well-trained, highly intelligent generalists could quickly grasp the issue and through disciplined analysis find the solution. The growth through the 1950s provided a basis for international expansion, and that accelerated the rate of the growth in the 1960s. Recruiting experienced executives and training them in this approach helped them to find long-term success. Bauer worked diligently to influence the partners and associates to share his vision. Above all, this firm was a firm dedicated to the mission of serving its clients well. Bauer enforced and focused on high standards of integrity, professionalism, ethics, technical excellence, and he was able to attract and develop consultants with outstanding qualifications. And he was committed to raising its standard and influence overall. The domestic growth through the 1950s provided a foundation for internal expansion that accelerated the rate of growth in the future of the company. The strength of the McKinsey and Company consulting firm. The knowledge is the lifeblood of McKinsey. This was the statement that started the article. And to me, this statement alone is powerful and is the foundation of the organization. McKinsey wanted to recruit experienced executives and train them. They embrace treating clients as responsibilities and the knowledge of these clients and the industry that they're in. They mentioned this was very important to them and important to the mission of the company. Bauer believed that these well-trained, highly trained, intelligent people and consultants could quickly grasp the issue as well as find the solution to the issue. Their domestic growth through the 1950s provided a basis or foundation for international expansion that accelerated the rate of growth well into the 1960s. So by the time Bauer stepped down, McKinsey was a well-established and highly respected presence in Europe and in North America. This company grew into a $1.8 billion consulting firm with a 20 growth history. It encouraged knowledge and client relationships. The company was and still is a strong company. And by the time Gupta took over, all of these things were a great sign for the future of McKinsey and Company. Fred Gluck invited a super group of younger partners with strategic expertise to a 3-day meeting to share ideas and develop an agenda for the strategy practice. Even though this particular practice started off messy and muddy, they came out with setting the foundation for the future of McKinsey. And this approach continue into 2019, and they still use this approach to get new initiatives and new ideas going forward to strengthen the company. When Ted Hall took over the committee, he felt that there was a need to adjust the firm's knowledge development focus. He wanted to shift gears and focus on building individual and team capability. Hall wanted to weed the company out of values and ideas that they no longer needed. For the most part, these 3 mini cases seemed to have progress, which was what Ted Hall wanted overall. With the Jeff Peters and the Sydney office assignment, the clients were extremely impressed and stated the consultants did a very good job and explained everything to them and their team. These particular clients were very hard to please, as it described in the article, and even they mentioned that they enjoyed the knowledge, the intellectual thoroughness that they brought, and their ability to share concepts they could understand and ideas that they can understand within the management group. They answered all questions to the best of their abilities, and these clients were pleased. And even though everyone was pleased, the Stokey was still a little disappointed despite them pleasing this particular client. With Warwick Bray and the European Telecoms, they discussed that they may need to learn how to apply their world-class expertise in industrial pricing to telecom. There was also a growth environment that was supported by this stronger infrastructure in the 1990s. With Stephen Dole and the business marketing competence, they stressed relationships, and the new center was gaining a lot of credibility and having a huge impact on what they were trying to do. The prospects for the center eventually paid off, and Dole, his interest shifted from consumer to industrial marketing issues. But he did know that his error was that he wasn't paying enough attention to developing the strong client relations. But this led to a new initiative, the B2B initiatives, which was the business-to-business marketing within the marketing plan. Dole was pleased with the way the new center gained credibility and, like we mentioned prior, had a huge impact. Later down the line, Ron Daniel, when he was hired as the full-time director of training to help solve some of the challenges that they were facing, he expanded the commitment to developing consultant skills and expertise so that it can become the norm. The executive committee began debating the need to formally update the firm's long-standing mission to reflect the firm's core commitment, not only to serving its clients, but also to developing its consultants. Daniel did feel that some structural changes were necessary, and he built on this initiative that he and his colleagues already implemented. He also encouraged more formal development of the firm's functional expertise in areas like strategy, organization, and operations, where knowledge and expertise were widely settled and slightly organized. In the 1980s, the growth was still resuming, and they had hopefulness, and it returned to how it was 10 years. The McKinsey and Company weaknesses. So there were many economic conditions that played a huge part in the weaknesses of this company. The differences and the inconsistencies in the work started to show themselves in the face of the company. Many problems erupted and exposed these weaknesses in the decade of doubt, is what they called it in the article. The ever-changing field of consulting changes, and you must adapt and change with it. The leadership succession was planned out well, but after a few years, McKinsey's growth began to stall. The economic turmoil of the oil crisis, the slowing of the division process that have fueled the European expansion, and the growth changes in client management, as well as the new look of the competitors, contributed to the stall in their growth. Also, the firm was growing too fast, and the quality of work was becoming uneven from the client's perspective as well as from the consultant's perspective. They were also struggling with the commissioner's report and had issues carrying out the initiatives attached to it. There was no strategies in place that were working to carry out these reports. McKinsey wanted to be knowledge-oriented as well as client-oriented. That was the foundation of McKinsey. However, over time, they started to move into too many different directions, and they left some consultants not feeling fulfilled despite clients being pleased with the work, as mentioned in the prior examples. I narrowed down about 4 more that I could think of. That fact that they changed gears many times, a lot of new initiatives very quickly, the direction of the leadership changing, and even the consultants being kind of confused about what was required from them. That's why they were not being fulfilled. A lot of growth as mentioned before, in a short amount of time, which made it hard for the company to stay afloat, and the growth increased more than they expected. So they weren't prepared for this level of growth. They strayed away from the original culture of McKinsey, which was mentioned earlier. So they were being client oriented, and then they were being knowledgeable of the industry, but they started to focus more on the knowledge of the clients, the knowledge of the consultants, and straying away from being client oriented, working for the clients being looking at the clients as responsibilities versus just just clients. There was also some uncertainty avoidance towards the end of the article when Raja Gupta was mentioned. He wanted to do a lot of new initiatives and go in a new direction, and people were fearful of the new direction of this new person in charge.
The case study points out well the opportunities available in McKinsey and Company, and the first outlined here is the openness to experimentation. Even at the beginning, there wasn't any reluctance in trying new things for the benefit of the client at first, and then once the focus was shifted to knowledge development, they still weren't hesitant to experiment and to take leaps and see what worked best for the overall better goal. Globalization was a tremendous opportunity outlined numerous times throughout the text, with the case that I'm about to speak about, with the three cases I'm about to speak about in a couple seconds, all ranging in different countries of the world, and communication fluidity going back and forth. Globalization was a big tool in their belt. Knowledge management infrastructure, the three cases at the end with Jeff Peters, Warwick Bray, and Stephen Dull were three different approaches and all successful outcomes, but went about it differently. With the Jeff Peters case being somewhat convoluted, and then with the Warwick Bray and the Stephen Dull ones being a bit more straightforward and easier to follow in how the development of those teams led to the overall success of those individuals. The career paths were opportunities as well for for McKinsey and Company, in that their concentration was there to develop them and really to invest in the people on staff and to make sure that they were on the correct career path that matched their personalities and their strengths. And the successes of the working groups, whether it be the clientele sector, the competence center, or the engagement team that eventually turned into the client service team, all were changed at a matter of need rather than the fact that they were unsuccessful. They actually were all successful for their time. And I think the shifting as the McKinsey Company evolved, then so did the teams. The threats for McKinsey and Company are outlined well towards the end of the case, specifically the threats in the growth. The speed of the growth is quoted as possibly being a bit too fast. He's quoted as saying, "I'm concerned that our growth may stretch the fabric of the place. We can't keep on disaggregating our units to create niches for everyone because we have exhausted the capability of our integrating mechanisms." That is worth noting, that the growth has been exponential and successful, but it is something to keep in mind as a possible threat if you grow quicker than you're able to. And then to go to the conflict with ideals, Gupta is also quoted in saying that if the means we do are 5 to 10% less client work today, we are willing to pay that price to invest in the future. While that does sound good and it's a sound practice, it does tend to clash with what McKinsey was originally started out as. Another possible threat, as noted in the case, also are the career paths and the possible limitations that come along with it, and the almost stifling nature that may come about different employees in the organization. Competition is one thing also, as in the three cases outlined that I mentioned in the previous slide. Bids have to be kind of put in and approved for certain projects, and the competition may have a negative effect rather than the positive one that they would hope to. Pace of technology is noteworthy in that the communication between nations and time zones and whatnot, you have to keep pace to be successful. And if technology somewhat were to backfire on you, your business is going to go along with it. And that factors into the last thread I have here of communication as well. If it seems like a lot is riding on good communication, and that's successful in the case so far, but if something were to break down, or if deadlines clashed with time zones, then it would be a potential threat to the success. The strategic gaps were present in McKinsey and Company. in some of the discrepancies between where they started out as and as they progressed and as they evolved. The big struggle was whether the focus should be on clients themselves and making sure that they are serviced in the best way possible, or is it the investment in the employee and building this knowledge base and building this network that they can rely on. Um, as we've kind of pointed out through the entire presentation, the threads do overlap, and I am a strong believer that with the knowledge base built up, it does trickle into the client being serviced that much more efficiently. But it does, at the beginning, illustrate differing themes. Another strategic gap would be the focus of the service team if it has multiple members. It was very much in the beginning, the one client would meet with their one consultant, and that relationship was key to the development. As the case went on, the teams grew, and they moved more towards you were being serviced by McKinsey and Company rather than ex-employee or whatever their name would be at the company. Instead, you relied on more of the tools of the team rather than the tools of the individual. The role of best interest is a possible strategic gap as well, in that the best interest of the client may not always be the best interest of the organization, and the quality of consultant and consultation, there's a gap there with wanting to build up the best possible consultant with trainings and tools and having the knowledge and the entire database at their fingertips.
Alternatives. Focus on the mission. Although Gupta's approach in leadership was to pursue all options available instead of wasting time in discussing the options, an alternative he could have focused on was the mission of the company. The 6 special initiatives that focus on issues important to the CEO seemed unnecessary within the 4-pronged approach. The company is well diversified and had a mission in place. Focusing on CEO-specific issues may derail the company of focusing on the major issue of needing to expand its resources and update technology. Ron Daniel worked on changing the mission during his leadership to tailor the company to its redefined vision. Gupta has been aware of the problems but was implementing too many approaches at the same time. Instead, focusing on the mission could have helped make consistent changes in goals and direction. Recommendations. Employee development. The development of employees is important to the company, especially when there is a risk of losing employees to the competition. Employees need a feedback system in place where they can be evaluated and geared towards promotion and rewards. This includes providing career pathing through resources for their development of skills like those that consultants had attained. This way, employees are guided towards becoming specialists and geared away from being generalists. Communication. The company would benefit from strengthening their communication. This can be done through knowledge management. Gonzalez and Mello's 2017 informed that the main objective of knowledge management is to create an organizational context that encourages the development of new knowledge by exploration or exploitation learning or by single or double loop, as well as to create mechanisms that promote retention of explicit or implicit knowledge and that disseminates knowledge among the individuals of the organization to put them into practice in organizational routines or in incremental improvement activities or innovation, producing dynamic capabilities and competitive advantage. Although knowledge management process is similar to that of learning organization, it has a greater focus on the management of knowledge and ability to share it. Loon 2019 informed us that knowledge management is largely represents a range of management approaches to simply enhance learning and codify knowledge. The company had a delayed in technical and skills and would benefit from establishing a network of knowledge that can be shared throughout the company regardless of its location. Knowledge management can help in establishing common knowledge agendas across the offices, and it has been proven to work effectively at an international level. As McKinsey developed the network and gears towards new technology like the use of internet, they would benefit from updating their communication approaches this way. Update. So what has happened with McKinsey and Company today? The McKinsey Knowledge Network has expanded to 1,500 analysts and experts based in 70 locations globally. In the 2000s, McKinsey created a social sector practice to serve not-for-profits, foundations, and other non-governmental organizations that focus on 4 areas: economic development, education, global public health, and social innovation. In 2007, McKinsey Solution was created to grow portfolio of web-based tools that provide clients with new ways to access McKinsey's knowledge and expertise in effort to grow solutions. The company also managed to publish the first global greenhouse gas cost curve that led to the climate change debate. In 2010, it established RTS, which is Reset, Transform, and Sustain. It helps provide restructuring and turnaround support to underperforming companies. In 2011, McKinsey Analytics was built to inform critical business decisions through their analytic capabilities. In 2012, the 11th Model Factory was added, which provided client team hands-on opportunities to experiment and learn. In 2013, Digital Labs grew as a technology provider with more than 250 technologists that assist in putting recommendations into practice faster. The company has continued to open new offices across the world and has invested in new developments like Generation, the nonprofit global youth unemployment agency. The company shows it was able to continue to strive and has been successful in increasing its resources. Quiz time. Question number 1. Does $1.8 billion seem successful considering that McKinsey has been open since 1926? Number 2. Based on the presentation, will you call McKinsey a successful company as of 2019? Number 3. Are the foundation and culture of a company directly connected to the success and longevity of a business? Number 4. Does being knowledge-focused mean sacrificing client well-being completely? Number 5. Is having international members on one consulting team a sustainable model? Number 6. Does the McKinsey of today garner the approval of founder James McKinsey? Number 7. What is your evaluation of Gupta's approach to leading change? Number 8. What are other alternatives or recommendations you think this company needed? Number 9. Judging by the updates provided, what do you think is the company's core source of competitive advantage today? Number 10. Is there any update that has impressed you thus far?